First, thank you all very much for coming. I really enjoyed the film, and I think everyone here did as well. So I think to start, I have a few questions here, and then we'll open it up to the audience for Q&A. But I thought we'd start with just some introductions. If you would, introduce yourself and Creative Breed and what you did at Mason, where you are now, and Andrew, a little bit about Venture for America. I think that would be a good way to open.
Hello, all. I'm Andrew Yang. I played Yoda in the film. I'm the founder and CEO of Venture for America. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for taking the time. Really, hats off to Cheryl for making a beautiful film. I saw what she had to go through to get this film made, and it's really, the whole thing's a testament to her and her character. Let's give her another round of applause. All right, so I'm just going to throw this out here, Libby. When you introduce yourself, so people are going to want to know, what the heck happened, Libby? What's going on with you now? So let's have Cheryl say hello, and then we'll give it to you, Libby.
I'm Cheryl Hazard, the producer and co-director of Generation Startup. I started out making feature films, moved into nonfiction television, and a little over 3.5 years ago, launched my own company. It took me many decades longer than the subjects in the movie to get up the courage and the guts to launch my own company and be an entrepreneur. And that's what really drew me to what Andrew Yang was doing in Venture for America. And making this movie was as hard as launching Castle or Bonza or what Labib's going to go through launching his new venture. But what kept me going was the inspiration I derived from everyone in this movie. Yeah.
Labib, do it. So what happened, Labib? What happened after the movie? You talking to your parents? What's going on?
A cursory introduction. My name is Libby Bronfman. Many of you just saw me. For the duration of the movie, I was living and working in Detroit for Mason America. In November of 2015, Mason was accepted into Y Combinator, which is an incredibly prestigious accelerator program that birthed Dropbox and Airbnb. I like to think I had some role in helping the company get there. But once that decision came through, I realized that I was not interested in being there anymore, in part out of a desire to come back to New York and spend time with my family, and in part because I wanted a different sort of working relationship than the one that I had with my boss at Mason. So I left. I left Detroit and I moved to New York and started working for a company called IPC Systems, where I'm happy to say I have a boss and a working relationship and a team with whom I'm very happy and who treat me well and have a healthy relationship with. The other thing that happened after I moved to New York is I realized that it was time for me to tell my parents about who I was. This is in part because the act of living different lives and splitting them into two and pretending to be one person in front of my parents and another person for myself was exhausting emotionally, but also was creating a lot of emotional angst that was spilling over into the rest of my life in pretty unhealthy ways. The other reason I had to tell them is because my brother and I had pretty explicitly spoken about it in the documentary, and it was premiering in New York in September, so that effectively became the deadline for us to tell our parents.
We waited until the week before the movie opened at the IFC Center.
And being the chronic procrastinator that I am, I waited until 2 weeks before the movie came out. 1 week? 1 week before the movie came out to tell my parents. So my brother and I went home to Yonkers on a Friday, and we thought at some point in the weekend we're going to find a good time, we're going to sit them down and tell them. And what ended up happening was we were just frozen for Friday evening, all of Saturday morning. We were just like, what is the pretext you use to sit your parents down and tell them what'll probably be the most shocking thing in their lives? And sort of by coincidence, I think my dad suspected a lot of the things that we felt about the world, and he sat us down and asked us, this is my first question is, do you believe in God? And, my brother and I, sensing the opening, we just seized it and we said no. And and that's where things became very difficult and challenging and sad. And my parents were, my dad was first shocked, then he called my mom in to listen. They were both shocked. Then they finally realized what was happening, and my dad became very quiet and left the room. My mom broke down in tears, just crying as though the world was ending, and kept saying again and again, "Why are you throwing us away?" My dad walked back into the room shortly after, and he said, in a very sort of calm, emotionally distant voice, "You know what? It's okay. You can do whatever you want, that's fine, but my relationship with you is over. If I die tomorrow, I don't want you to know. I don't want your mom to tell you. I don't want her to call you. I don't want you at my funeral. My relationship with you is over. We will never speak again." And we packed up all of our stuff. They drove us into the city and dropped us off at our apartment. And, we thought that was it. And the movie premiered. And we hadn't spoken to them for 3 weeks. And then I saw my dad calling me on my phone, and I picked up wondering if something terrible had happened. Instead, he opened with what I suspect you'll now recognize as his, typical bluster, and tried to convince us that we were wrong in some way, until finally giving up and saying, "You know what? We're too sad without you in our lives, so please come home this weekend." And so we did, and we've gone home every other weekend after that, and I was at home for Thanksgiving. So I'm at a place with my family right now where it's an entirely new relationship. No one ever thought that this would happen. My parents never thought that we would not be religious. We never thought that after telling them they would want to have a relationship with us. So it's an interesting, complex, emotionally messy time in our lives, but I think I'm finally going to be able to build a relationship with my parents on the basis of who I actually am as a person, and I am terribly excited to be able to do that.
Thank you, Libby. Andrew. Andrew, before we go into the Q&A, can you tell us a little bit or a lot more about Venture for America? If you go to ventureforamerica.org, you'll see a picture of Andrew in the White House with President Obama intently listening to him and elucidate on the role of entrepreneurship in America. So can you tell us a little bit about how you started it, what its mission is, what its operations are, what opportunities for perhaps students in the audience maybe?
Sure. How many of you know a lot about Venture for America? If so, raise your hand. I mean, not many. All right, great. So I went to law school after college because I didn't know what to do, and I hated being a lawyer, really hated it. Went home to my folks, who are a little bit like Libby's folks, and we're just like, "Hey, this is not the job you raised me to do." And they're like, "What are you talking about? It's a great job." It's like, "No, it's really not." So I left to start a company when I was 24, and it crashed and burned terribly. How many of you guys have tried to start a business? All right, so if you have your hand up, it's rough, right? I mean, yeah, it was rough. So it was so rough for me that my company flopped. And so then I was like, oh man, what do I do now? I just lost people hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I hooked up with a more experienced entrepreneur for 4 years and worked under someone more experienced and got stronger and better. And then eventually I became the CEO of an education company called Manhattan GMAT that went on to be acquired. And after it was acquired, I thought of the biggest problems in the world. And the biggest problem I kept coming back to is that we had a lot of talented people who hated their jobs. A lot of people who were doing things that weren't helping them or society, and they wanted something more, but they weren't being asked to do it, and there wasn't a real path to do so, and there wasn't a sense of purpose or community. And I remember when I was younger trying to do this stuff, I felt like I was crazy. It's like people, and my parents treated me like I was crazy. Girls seemed to think I was crazy. It was all, it was very isolating. And so I started Venture for America in 2011 with $120K of my own, and our budget was $200,000. So it was me and some friends guilt tripped. It was like, hey man, don't you love America? And they were like, what will it take for this conversation to end? And I was like, $10,000. It's all right, here. So that was 2011. We've just grown every year because of people like Libby and Cheryl and Bruce and others just like believe in what we're doing because everyone sees the need. So what we do in practice, in concrete terms, is if you go to ventureforamerica.org and apply, we accept applications year-round from people who are seniors in college. Any seniors in college here? If so, all right. Any people who've just graduated from college? Like that? So when you are a senior in college or you graduate, you apply to Venture for America, and then we try and find the best people we can who, like Labib, have the potential to contribute to the growth of a company or maybe even start one. And so if you get in, we train you for 5 weeks with McKinsey and IDEO and Flatiron School, and then we send you to work at a startup like Mason in Detroit in one of 18 cities, not New York. So don't apply if your jam is like being here in New York. It's cool. It's awesome here. So like no problem. But if you join Venture for America, you go to one of 18 cities around the country that generally is not receiving an influx of talent on an annual basis from college grads. You work there for 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, if you want to start your own business, we have a little seed fund. No, actually, the seed fund is getting bigger. So we were out in San Francisco last month, and then the CEO of LinkedIn and the founder of LinkedIn jointly pledged $1 million to fund startups that people like Labib start out of VFA because they're like, hey, you're gathering some of like the highest character, like, most entrepreneurial people in the country. It's like, I want to support it. So that's what Venture for America looks like. We are a national entrepreneurship apprenticeship program dedicated to trying to make positive impact in communities that aren't flourishing right now. And so if you're really into this, I wrote a book called Smart People Should Build Things, it's about the genesis of VFA. Oh, have you read this book,
also
Bruce?
dedicated to changing the face of entrepreneurship, right?
Oh yeah, thanks, Cheryl. So 47% of our last class is women, 18% Black and Latino. We're trying to change the face of entrepreneurship because it's a lot of white dudes and some Asian dudes too. No, not even that many of us really. Though I have to say, people think we're, I don't know, what I mean? All right.
Maybe I could buy a copy of the book if you autograph it for me. So let me.
This one's yours, man. I'll just leave this here, Brian.
Okay, thank you. I got something for you too. Now, let me ask a few questions again. If you want to tweet in a question at Pacey Lab, but let me start with you. And since we're out of college, and you're one of the recent college grads, who went out in the program, if Johns Hopkins asked you to come back and speak to the freshman class and impart some words of wisdom, both on their academic career, like what kind of courses should they be taking in the next 4 years, what kinds of activities should they participate in, and maybe how should they think about entrepreneurship, startups, and a professional career, what would you tell these eager young freshmen? And you can tell I didn't share the questions ahead of time.
This is, it's a bit of a tall order to answer sort of off the cuff, but I'll try my best. I think, so the thing that so the first is like all of the things that seem important to people while they're in college, their grades, what internships they have, and what clubs they're a part of, they matter materially less. Like they matter so much less than any freshman can possibly imagine. Like the most important thing, and this is like a bit of a cliche, is for in college is for someone to figure out exactly like what are the things that are important to you, or at least like what direction of things are important to you. Not necessarily the specific things, but like what is it that you care about in the world. And like the idea that there is some single thing that you're passionate about is a bit of a falsehood, but there is directionally something that you care about. You probably care about like equality for people, or you care about like working in technology and building cool things. The specific thing that you do is not important, but you should probably find that thing. The second thing that I would say, and like this is probably based on like a bias from my personal experience, is that like whatever thing that you want to see happen in the world, however difficult it may seem, it is probably possible if you like work hard at it enough and care about it for a long enough period of time. If you think about solving problems, like it's pretty much a function of how many people you can get to care about it and what resources are available to you, and with enough time and energy and effort, like a reasonably intelligent person can get both of those things in enough quantity to change whatever problem it is that they care about. The change may not be as big as they want it to be. It will not be a perfect solution, but it'll be in the direction that you want the world to go. So don't be limited by what people say you can do. Just like pick the thing that you're interested in and then like try to keep working towards getting there. And then you'll get somewhere close enough, but not really. But you'll be happy probably.
Yeah. No, I think it's important, and you don't always know what your passion is. I like to say you know your passion finds you usually when you're in the wrong place at the right time. But kind of keeping that radar open is really important. I love one of the things Dextina said in the movie. So here's a woman going to MIT studying engineering, and remember the line, like in school there's an equation and you solve for X. It was easy, but in life it's so hard. And I kind of had the opposite experience. I wasn't that crazy about math, and I love the unknown world of entrepreneurship and uncertainty and creating something new. So it's interesting, that mindset. But also the idea, I wouldn't tell students, especially my students, not to worry about grades, and just to see if my students are still here. Before you leave, sign the attendance sheet. But what do you call the person who graduates at the bottom of their class in medical school? Right, doctor. So there's a lot more important things than grades. Let me go to Cheryl. Obviously, making the film is an entrepreneurial journey in and of itself. And I'm wondering, if you think of yourself instead of the producer, director as an entrepreneur, what were, some of those challenges, and when you saw the entrepreneurs, things you related to? And lastly, and also, what impact would you like the film to have on the audience, both entrepreneurs and otherwise? Right.
I'll start with the second question first, but the impact that I have seen the film have. I mean, it opened we were invited by the White House to screen at Obama's Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Palo Alto in June. We were invited by Michael Moore to his Traverse City Film Festival. The film opened theatrically in New York at the IFC Center, in LA, in Santa Monica, in Detroit at the Detroit Institute of Art. And now we've had over 100 event screenings like this one. So universities, American Express has booked it. We screened at LinkedIn to all their offices around the world. I mean, there are a lot of major corporations, startups, venture funds, who are booking it either for internal team building or for a lot of community screenings, where like last night in Calgary, they had 400 people come, and the entrepreneurship community came together. And I love that. I love that the film is fostering community. And also I see everybody takes away, like any piece of art, takes away what they bring to it. So people in Detroit relate to the film in one way, and people who are successful entrepreneurs relate to it in a different way. And college students relate to it in a different way, but what everyone brings away is, the major themes of, like Libby said, to work hard to build something meaningful. I think that the biggest message of the whole movie is that we need to move outside our comfort zones to learn and grow as people. There's obviously a very strong message of the need for greater racial diversity and gender diversity in the tech world, and just even the idea of like life after college, and the fact that when you're stepping out into a void, just have the courage to fail. Just like have the courage to make mistakes and to
after my first company went bust, I thought, wow, it doesn't get any worse than this. But you get up, and first you realize that no one actually knows that you started a failed company unless you tell them. So you don't have to tell them if you don't feel like it. The second thing is that I owed a lot of money, but I realized no one came and took my stuff or anything. I just got annoying letters. It's not so bad. But it just made me feel really resilient for years afterwards, where I'd be like, well, this can't be as bad as my company failing. It's like, well, this can't be as bad as that. So the thing makes you bulletproof. Failure, it's like now, and it's one thing I always want to say. It's like, it's always easy for a dude on a panel with a microphone to say failure is like, is good because, like I seem shiny now, and it's like the shiny person can say failure's okay, failure's okay. But like I remember what it's like in the mud, and it's like I'm still in my own form of mud, and like you're just so much more resilient than you believe, and you're capable of so much more than you believe. Like if you said to me, like 24-year-old me, like half of the stuff that I've seen or done, I would be like, that's bananas, it's crazy. But the reason why things become possible is because like Labib said, it's like you have a direction, you go in it. There are too few people in this world that are actually heading in a direction. And when you head in a direction and the people around you aren't going anywhere, they're like, oh, where's that person going? Like you could lead people all sorts of weird places, you know what I mean? Like it's like you just pick a direction and go. Like you can even try it as a pedestrian. You're like, I'm just gonna pick up around. It's like the person next to it to start walking. So really, like I just want to say that it's like the failure aspect. There are too few people that put themselves out there, and that if you do stumble and fall, you will get back up.
So Andrew just answered the first question for me. My son was a VFA fellow having an amazing experience. I met Andrew at a breakfast by chance. I said, oh my God, you are Andrew Yang. You are changing my son's life. What you're doing is extraordinary. I want to follow some of your fellows in one of your cities. Will you give me full access? You have like no editorial say, but like if you give me full access, I'll make a beautiful film. And he said, yeah, I'm along for that. I was lucky enough to raise the initial funding from PwC Charitable Foundation, who is a big supporter of VFA, so that was great. I attached Cynthia Wade as co-director, and we started making the movie. We almost ran out of money. I never told my husband that we might be looking at putting our own personal money into this movie. Andrew kept saying, like, don't worry, I won't let that happen to you, but like the buck stops here. It was just like every step of the way, there were just one obstacle after another. And aside from the fact that the whole time we're shooting, we ended up with over 200 hours of footage. I didn't know if we ever had a movie. And then we got into the edit room, and turning over 200 hours of footage into a 93-minute cohesive movie with 6 disparate storylines, like that was just really hard. And so even to the last moment, we would have like this film that still felt very blobby and not like it was cohesive, and we would have people come and screen and tell us what they found confusing. And I was like, oh my God, like which character can we take out of the movie and try to like go deeper and make it more cohesive? And we finally kind of kept in the edit room working at it, and we also, distribution is broken. People don't go to the movie theaters anymore to see movies. They certainly don't go to see documentaries unless it's like a big, big deal. So I was very, very protective of my baby, and had an incredible executive producer who's one of the top people in documentary distribution. We carved out our own distribution plan where we released in these 3 cities to get national press. We got a ton of great press. Now we're doing this event distribution. The film's gonna come out. It's gonna start being marketed next month through an educational distributor with curriculum for middle schools, high schools, universities, libraries. So anyway, I mean, it's just, but every step of the way, there was like just one obstacle after another, and this, the 16-hour days, 7 days a week and all of that. But I felt like everyone in the movie does. I loved this film so much, and it energized me rather than sapped me. And I think that's the mark of any entrepreneur who just feels excited about what they're building.
Yeah, it's really uncanny how whatever you're building, like it finds your limit. Like I was just talking to a guy yesterday, he was like an entrepreneur, and he was like, oh my God, it's like the last nickel. I was like, I'm gonna have to quit, da, 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 da. And then I get that call. It's like, holy crap, like just the universe is funny. The universe is gonna push and push and push until you're like, oh, like I'm down to like that last shred of like money, dignity, friendship, like, self-belief. But if you persist at that point, the universe will reach down and help you. And like Cheryl was talking about her points with it. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. But it's like every entrepreneurial story, you'll find your limit. And then
now, what Andrew said, I'm like, bring it on. Like, whatever it is, I'm ready.
Yeah, and then you push through it, and then you grow from it. It's like entrepreneurs, man. Like I know entrepreneurs now like, around the country. It's like almost they have like leather skin. I mean, it's like Anyone play Dungeons and Dragons? They have
Are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah, do it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bartek Shemansky. I'm a junior here at Pace University. My question is, from the film, I noticed that it was very important for you to be organized and disciplined, and from that, for an individual, I would feel that it's important to develop some habits. And is there anything that you sort of did, whether you had different habits or one that was consistent, that really helped you survive in the difficult circumstances you faced?
So I don't think I was very effective at building good habits then. I think mostly because my options, like Detroit has a way of constraining your options so much that there's really not a lot. I don't want to bag Detroit because I now live in New York, but they're different cities, there are fewer people, there are fewer things to do. So because of that, I didn't really have to build really effective habits for myself in order to be productive because there were so few distractions around me other than the internet. I do have to build habits for myself today because New York is an incredibly distracting city if you let it be. So one of the things that I do now is the more decisions I allow myself to make, the more likely I am to make a bad one. And if I have anchor default decisions, I'm more likely to do that anchor default decision. So one of the things that I do is if I leave my decision of what to eat and where to eat too open on any given day, I am more likely to make a junk food decision depending on how bad my day has been on that specific day. So I've built a routine in terms of what I eat. So I work at an office in Jersey City. I don't eat breakfast every day at 11 a.m. I get a spinach and goat cheese salad. Every day at 3 p.m. I drink a 400-calorie meal alternative that contains caffeine and theanine because the 3 p.m. crash is real. You just want to put your head down at your desk and nap. And so I drink that thing and it makes me full and not hungry, but I also don't, it's like Soylent is a meal replacement and they make a coffee variant called Coffeeist. So I drink that at 4 p.m. or between 2 and 4 p.m. I sip that over the 2 hours. So I don't crash. It makes me not full. It makes me not full but also not hungry, and it makes me alert. And then at 7 p.m. I go and I eat dinner wherever I want, whatever I want. And the combination of all of those things usually leads in me making A, more productive decisions, better decisions, and B, spending less time making that decision. I spend less time agonizing over it. And therefore, because decisions are willpower, and willpower is a measure of how effective a human you can be, it's probably better to limit those decisions. And I do that with the clothes that I wear, with the food that I eat, with the things that I read, is just limit the number of unnecessary decisions that you have to make in your life. And that's probably going to make you more productive.
I guess that's why Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day, the blue jeans and the black sweater, and Obama supposedly only has 2 suits, blue and gray, so he doesn't have to make decisions about what to wear. How about another question from either someone inside of Pace, outside of Pace? Okay, Dr. Morrow.
Hi, Labib. Could you analyze your relationship with your boss as portrayed in the film?
I will speak generally about the nature of choosing whom you work with, whether that's a boss or a teammate. And I will say that the people that you work with, they occupy most of your waking time. They occupy most of the time that you choose to do something with your life. And it is incredibly important that the people that you choose to work with are people with whom you get along and that you trust. And it doesn't mean that you don't disagree on anything, but it does mean that you share the same way of looking at the world, and that you trust that when they say something, that they will generally follow through on it to the best of their abilities. It is really important that the people that you work with, in whatever setting, be true. The second thing that I'll say is it is very hard to tell whether that is true about someone from a 30-minute interview, from talking to them on the phone, from doing a full day, right? So it is a really hard problem to solve. Is how do you, without any prior context, vet whether someone is the right person for you to work with? And I urge you, in whatever capacity in which you make a decision to work with someone, be very careful and be very deliberate about that decision, and ask for references from people who have worked with that person in the past. You don't need to know them personally. If you're going to a job interview and you know that who your boss is going to be, ask them if they have email addresses for people whom they've worked with, or people who, not at the job that they have now, but at the job that they've had before, and ask if you can talk to those people to know what they're like to work with. Or like stalk them on LinkedIn, look at their previous job, find out what their previous team was, and cold message that person on LinkedIn. If they're the right kind of person to work with, they will not blame you for that decision, and they will actually take it as a sign of like responsibility that you are vetting your choice before you take the job.
I mean, it's a risky suggestion because it could turn off some people. But when I interview people, I always say to them, this is a two-way street, and if you want to talk to people who have work here or who have worked for me in the past, I will offer that because it's important that you like talk to them. So.
And it's interesting from a general strategy point of view, that idea of creating a corporate culture, whether a large company or a small company, a volunteer organization or otherwise, it's really difficult, on a corporate end when you're as an entrepreneur and working that hard, as like, Andrew said, the universe pushing you right to the edge. It's difficult. So I appreciate the question. Do we have another question? Well, we want to leave a little bit of time right at the end for networking and to fill out the cards, but we're still on schedule. Please.
Over here, it looks like. Oh, you got it.
Oh, right. Yep.
Sweet. Hi, so my name's Nick. I'm a junior here at PACE. So Libby, I have a question for you. I know that everyone has asked you a question, so I feel bad for Andrew and Cheryl, but I'm
Don't
sorry.
feel bad at all.
Not at all. I mean,
He's
Cool.
a star.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I noticed, and specifically when you wanted to start the business with your brother, your parents had something to say that they said a lot during the film, that you didn't study this in college, you didn't graduate for this, why would you go and do this? Did you find that not studying what you wanted to do later held you back? And did you regret studying what you did study, even though it wasn't necessarily specific to what you were doing a lot of the time?
So I regret studying what I studied, but not in any way that has to do with my career. It was just Johns Hopkins is a really hard school. Biomedical engineering is a really hard major. It was really hard and miserable all of the time, and like I could have made my life profoundly easier had I chosen to study something else. So I regret it in that direction. But in terms of whether it affected my ability to accomplish things in life and the opportunities that I have, I don't think it's limited me in any way. Like, of course, I have like personal biases to believe that is true, but so far, I think it hasn't been a problem. It hasn't affected my ability to do my job effectively. One of my coworkers in attendance, maybe she can attest to like maybe I'm not as good a coworker as I thought I could be because of my engineering background. But no, it hasn't been limiting. I think so. Like we live in a world that is fairly complex and changes all the time. And this is a truism and I don't know. I wish I'd formed that statement differently, but like the room for opportunity is generically for smart people who can absorb complexity, know the different places where information and people interact with each other, and then propose ways for things to get better. And you can become that kind of person, whether you're an engineer or an economics major or someone who studied some abstract art. Like, as long as you are the kind of person who thinks generally about problems and ways to solve them by bringing people and other resources together, and you are able to tell that story to people that you want to work with, I really don't see why the specific thing that you choose to study is a thing that matters.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Let me just ask a question of Andrew that I'm curious about and I think will be helpful for those here in the audience. You've been an entrepreneur, in the previous company and obviously starting Venture for America as an entrepreneurial pursuit. And now you send out the fellows, the Venture for America fellows. I'm wondering, how you prepare them, like what are your concerns when you send them out and what kind of advice do you give them, as they go out? So, what are your concerns for your your entrepreneurship fellows, and what kind of advice do you give them?
So the advice I give them is that it's going to be hard, but hard in a way that they don't expect. Like, it's not going to be like hard work hard, though there might be some of that. So the two ideas I try and posit to them are the void and the grind. So the void is very alien to most people who've been in school, which is that they go out and then they're not sure what the right course of action is. They don't know how they're being evaluated. They're not sure how to use their time in particular spaces. And then they become very, very uncertain. And that happens in the entrepreneurial setting all of the time, where you just have to wake up and be like, all right, like, what's the best use of my day to day? Like, what am I going to try and make happen today? And that's very unsettling for most people early on, and actually, you know, maybe always for some. And then the grind is that, like, when you find the thing, it's like, okay, I think this is something I'm supposed to be trying to do or make happen or get better. Except it never happens quickly. Like, you have to, like, put your shoulder into it, and then you do it, and then it doesn't work out quite the way you thought, but, like, you made some progress and you learn something, so you do it again. You do it again. It's like sanding a deck or something, and then eventually the thing is going to be smooth and shiny and beautiful. So those are the two things that I try and prepare people for that are very hard to prepare someone for when they haven't experienced either. My concerns used to be around facile things like, hey, maybe someone's going to have a bad boss, bad experience. But, like, now my concerns are much more human. They're that people are going to get depressed. People are going to have personal problems. People are going to run into, like, you know, issues of, you know, like, beyond sort of like I don't like my job issues. Like what I've recognized now is that we're pushing people to regard their work and career as personal. But then, and that has incredible upside and power. It can make someone capable of incredible things, but it also makes work much harder to turn off, and it makes your relationship with work much more intense. And that hurts sometimes. Like, when the relationships end, it is like divorces, or it is like, you know, friendships ending most all the time. And there are people who, when their company goes, like, even when my company went under in my 20s or whatever, like, I was beaten up by that and felt like I needed just to go someplace and lick my wounds. So those are the things I worry about. You know, it's hard to convey that to people while still making them amped about entrepreneurship, but, like, that is the stuff that I think about.
One thing I'm thinking about failure, and I like the part, if you don't tell people, they don't know you failed, but in his famous speech at Stanford commencement address, Steve Jobs talked about, you know, death as life's greatest change agent. And in the face of death, like, what does it matter? You know, if you fail or you're embarrassed or there's a problem, you know, go out and do it. Find what you love. The only way to do great work is to do what you love. And if you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Let's take you know, maybe one or possibly two more questions. And then we could you know, have some time for networking and to fill out the cards and take some pictures and post them on Twitter. So do we have one or two more questions? Please.
Mike. Hi, my name is Erin, and first of all, congratulations. It's fantastic film. Libby, thank you for being so vulnerable. And Andrew, also, thank you for being very honest about what your experience has been. You know, because, like you said, when you sit up on a panel, people, you kind of take yourself and be like, yeah, failure is really hard. So it's important. It's important to be transparent and say, you know, it's hard, but if you keep at it, you get someplace. I know that there's people here that are, you know, in tech and stuff like that, but, you know, maybe there's people here that are in the arts also, literature, media, anything like that. I think, you know, I wonder, Andrew, if you have started to think about taking this and putting it into more sort of like the liberal arts world. Because I think that most people think of startups, what?
Yeah, please.
Most people think of startups as, well, you know, it's a tech, or it's, you know, or it's food, or, you know, something like that. And the truth is that it's the same formula no matter whether you're a musician or a dancer or anything like that.
Yes.
And sometimes actually the people that have been sort of toiling in those worlds
yes.
have a lot to, you know, to offer the people that are coming into this world?
Oh, yeah.
Because they're like, actually, welcome to the soup. So I'm just wondering if you've started to think about doing that.
Wow, I have not in the form you're suggesting.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
But I will say that the communion between arts and entrepreneurship is so strong that I respect people who pursue creative, literary, and artistic endeavors so much, because you have to put your heart and soul into it and then present it to the world and then have it there. And then my friends who are musicians or whatnot, and like that, it's. I mean, one joke I tell is that, like, you should only be an entrepreneur like you should be a musician, which is, like, if you have no choice, like, you should avoid it if you can. But most people who are really born creatives feel compelled to create. Like, it's not like, oh, I've lined a bunch of things up and, like, that's the one I choose. It's like, you must do it. And I think that it's the same kind of thing where you have to live more intensely as a result. So I just love people who take that journey. Cheryl is an incredible role model, where she's like worked for decades and is like so optimistic and pure and good in a way that most people are not able to maintain for like decades after one graduates. Like, I joke with college students where it's like they come at like max idealism in like college, and then like every successive day out of college, it's like the world's gonna try and chip away. So Arts for America in that way. The thing that pains me so much, it's that the marketplace does not reward art in the way that it could or should, and so you end up with people who have like this incredible incredible expression, but then they're always like also scrambling for like a marketplace option, and the marketplace and the artistic merit are like only distantly related, and it's true for nonprofits, which I now run a nonprofit, and I tell people it's like there's the work and then there's like raising money for the work, and you could be really good at one and terrible at the other. So it's something that I wish we could change as a society, just to make it so that more people had the ability to create more and feel rewarded for it. I'll think about that. Thank you.
And just here at Pace, I'm not sure if here at Pace, but we in the lab we run a course called Entrepreneurial Implementation, where people have to actually implement some part of a business. And what's nice is we have 6 schools and colleges. So in this last year, we had 2 dancers. From the Dyson College of Arts and Science, we have an acting class. One was a Rockhead, and another one, and they had never taken not only any entrepreneurship class, but any business class, and wound up creating ventures that were successful before the end of the 14-week class. So one person, Juliet Nieves, who's a dancer, complained like, it's hard to get dancers. Well, why not start a dance company? But let's think of the angle. Where's a need? What kind of value can you create? And she wound up, videotaping a bunch of different kinds of dances, and she found a need at like weddings or like, corporate retreats to break things up. And another one said, I don't know, I love food and going out. And she started, again, another dancer, Foodie Out Loud. We have someone now, an artist, just took the class, and he likes making greeting cards, and he's having this whole concept. It's like postco.com. He already got the website and everything. An artist can upload their images, and people buy like these kind of custom cards. So there's a lot of that going on. And I think the last thing is that this idea that an entrepreneur is not just about business, especially in this changing economy, again, with globalization, hyper competition. My first job was on Wall Street, and we used to have an expression, you're only as good as your last trade. What have you done for me lately? And now in the rest of the professional career, it's not this slow escalator ride up. It's what have you done for me lately, whatever area you're in. Unless you have like lifetime appointment as a tenured professor. But in any case, I think in all these areas, art, otherwise nonprofits, that idea of thinking entrepreneurial, the ability to recognize, analyze, and capture opportunity in order to solve problems or create benefits that people value. So I think it's a great question. I love having art students or people that have never taken, again, not only an entrepreneurship class, but never even taken a business class, and they're some of the most passionate, hardworking students.
Aaron, I also just want to say that the proportion of artists in a community is directly related to economic growth in that community, the same way the proportion of entrepreneurs is. It's like research shows it. So like artists stimulate economic growth in the exact same way.
Okay, so should we do the very last question?
My question is actually for Andrew. I was just curious, looking back to your younger self, before your company.
Yeah.
What would your older self do differently?
So I just want to say, like, I reflect when I come to this sort of things. I remember sitting in rooms like this, seeing people on the panel being like, interesting. So like you're gonna be me and Libby and Cheryl in like X period of years. I mean, no doubt about it. I wish that I'd been a little bit easier on myself in my 20s. Like I was always just like so just like down on myself. Like wasn't like achieving certain things, and like if I'd eased up, I would have made. I would have given my parents a better time and just generally just been like a nicer roommate, like generally. It's if you are a good, well-intended person who's trying to do the best work they can and want to work with great people, then things will go well for you. And there were times in my life when I doubted that, and that's what I would have done differently. It's like I just would have had that belief and confidence and faith because it's true.
You could only connect the dots looking backwards, not looking forwards. So how about a hand for the movie and our panel?